Our story begins with a Shinigami telling Seiji Aino, our protagonist, that if he doesn't kiss, he'll die. But he shuts the door on her face, though she sneaks in anyways. She shows him her kiss note, where she's written his name in it, and if he doesn't kiss someone in 24 hours, death waits, but for her. So Seiji throws her out, but she begs for his help, so he reluctantly complies. She tells him she needs a kiss from him, so Seiji, nervous, goes for it and kisses her. Though she's left unfazed as she explains that when she writes in two people's names with an X between them, they'll kiss within 24 hours. And she actually wanted to pair up two hot men with each other, as it's her hobby, but got kanji wrong and made it Seiji's name instead, but wants to repay him by pairing him up with the boy of his dreams, and that if he isn't paired up within 24 hours, he'll be a virgin forever. Distraught, they head to his school, while the Shinigami is in invisible mode to others, and Seiji wants to pair up with his classmate, Akane Hayama. But she spots and approaches him, though he gets nervous, wondering if she can see the Shinigami. But she demonstrates she can't by pulling down her shorts. But she can see her to their shock, so Seiji tries to disassociate from her, but she ends up saying he kissed her. Akane ends up shocked at this and decides she'll execute him for cheating on her in advance and charges at him with a pair of knives. But the Shinigami saves him, though she's stabbed, but she can't die to their shock, so Seiji drags her away. Later, they figure they can't pair him up with anyone else since Akane would just go and kill him. So at this, Seiji wants the Shinigami to write down her own name since it's her fault, but she suddenly faints, stabbed by Akane, who found them. Akane explains she knew Seiji liked her and waited for him to confess, but he ended up with someone else. So at this, Seiji says he likes her, but she decides to kill them both anyways. So she charges at the Shinigami, but Seiji shields her. But then Seiji and Akane suddenly kiss, as the Shinigami wakes up and shows she's written Akane's name down, pairing them up to Akane's marvel and Seiji's despair. Then the Shinigami demonstrates she's actually an angel and a cupid named Guri. But then she suddenly kisses Seiji and shows she's added her name to the relationship. To their utter shock, she explains that thanks to Seiji shielding her earlier, she decided to add herself because since she's actually pretty bad at being an angel and doesn't know much about love, she wants to know if that's what she's feeling. But then Akane stabs him. Though he can't die, as after pairing with Guri, they've received an angel's blessing and become immortal. The next day, Seiji wakes up and is kissed by Guri, to his shock. After that, she eats with his family, who she's brainwashed into accepting her. But then, a cat with a human's face talks to Seiji and freaks him out. But it explains he's Guri's supervising angel Coralie, borrowing his cat Blue's body. He has them go meet with Akane, who Seiji again, as some girls wonder he's her boyfriend. And then Coralie explains they've momentarily become angels as well, but angels need to work. So if Guri doesn't keep making couples, they'll go to hell and lose their souls. So they reluctantly agree to help Guri. Later, Seiji hangs with Guri, but she suddenly kisses him to his shock, though she's disappointed, as it wasn't like the first time. But a girl saw them who slips, but Seiji catches her, though she's angry at him for cheating on Akane, and then grabs the book and escapes. So Seiji chases after her, as Guri ate too much to run, and on the roof, he notices she's written someone's name down. But then a shield surrounds her, which slices the roof, so Seiji tries to grab her, but they both fall. Though he cushioned her fall, but Akane is now there thinking he's cheating on her again. So the girl wakes up and runs away, so Akane tries to kill her, but her shield protects her to her shock and realization. She then runs away and then tries to add her name to their relationship, but Yuri catches up and explains only an angel can write in it. The girl explains she heard their conversation yesterday and wanted to pair up with someone using the book. But then Akane appears, recognizing the girl as Yusa Kichogasaki, and charges at her, but Seiji calls her by her first name and tells her to stop, which she immediately does, happy because he used her first name. But Yusa tries to convince Akane her feelings are just made up by the book, and says that she loves her. But Akane rejects her, since Yuzu's actually her little sister, and because she loves Seiji already. But then, Guri shows she's added Yuzu to their relationship, since she can't ignore a maiden in love as an angel, to their shock. But Yuzu now has to kiss one of them, so Akane agrees he'll beat her so she won't kiss Seiji. But as Yuzu rushes to her, she slips and accidentally ends up kissing Seiji anyways. So Akane goes and stabs them both. Yuzu, stalking, steals Akane's trash, but is met by Guri, who's found her interesting. Meanwhile, Seiji's littler sister, Aqua, is back home and avoided brainwashing, but she behaves toughly with Seiji, throwing him away. But Akane saw this, so she tries to kill her, but stops after he says she's his sister. So she apologizes and introduces herself, but Aqua coldly ignores them. Later, at school, Guri and Yuzu are running a pairing couple's business, but Akane and Seiji find and reproach them for this. But as Yuzu says, she's just been helping Guri with work, and Guri points out Seiji hasn't helped her. He confiscates the book and goes work with Akane. Yuzu Yuzu's left angry at him, so she asks Guri if Seiji's why she's caught up in this, though Guri says it was her idea, but that she's not sure she loves Seiji, since she never experienced love, but she finds him interesting and fun, though she has knowledge of love thanks to manga and message boards. Meanwhile, Seiji bumps into the class rep Mary, who's been spacing out. But at this, Akane asks if she's in love, saying that she can pair him up with her crush, but she claims it's actually the opposite. Meanwhile, Yuzu and Guri see the paper as a love poem, so they want to help whoever wrote it. But then a teacher, Kusunoki, barges in and takes the paper away. But finding out they've read it, he's embarrassed for writing it, but Yuzu says it was wonderful. But then Seiji and Akane arrive with Mary. Kusunoki turns red and slips, but at this, Mary reluctantly puts him together, though he then faints as Seiji and Yuzu realize Kusunoki's crush is Mary. So Guri summons a strategy meeting, but Seiji is against pairing them up since Mary doesn't want him and their student and teacher. But Yuzu and Guri decide they'll observe their feelings and then convince Seiji of it, so they go find Kusunoki. Though Seiji's kept the book thinking they won't do any harm that way, only to see that they tied Kusunoki up and want him to confess his love through the school's microphone. But he breaks out and escapes. Meanwhile, Seiji finds Mary and asks her true feelings. While that happens, Kusunoki loses the girls but ends up seeing and hearing Mary saying that she wouldn't accept Kusunoki, and that his clumsiness just reminds her of her little brother, which devastates Kusunoki. In a flashback, we see Mary found Kusunoki's poem to his dismay, but she found it wonderful and complimented him for it. This made him fall in love with her, though he knew it couldn't be. In the present, Seiji finds him, but then Yuzu runs to them and says that Mary's been taken hostage in a robbery in town, so they rush there. But it's actually part of their plan, as Guri plans on taking her hostage and Kusunoki will save her and they will kiss, but she accidentally bumps into Mary, who recognizes her. But then actual robbers escape from a bank right in front of them, but the police quickly arrives, so they take Guri and Mary hostages. Seiji, Yuzu, and Kusunoki arrive, and Guri says their plan's gone south, but tells Yuzu to proceed as planned anyways. So Yuzu demands Kusunoki to go save Mary so she'll accept him, but as a robber tells them to shut up, Yuzu says extras shouldn't talk, which angers him, so he shoots her. But Seiji shows her away, though the bullet grazed him, though Yuzu reminds him she has a shield anyways. Then Seiji also tells Kusunoki to save Mary, so he goes for it, and with Mary's help, he punches the robber. But he's weak as hell, and it does nothing, so the robber gets mad. But then Akane arrives, but after seeing Seiji's wounded, she gets pissed and easily disposes of the robbers. While that happens, Kusunoki tells Mary that one day, when they're no longer student and teacher, he'll confess her feelings, asking her to wait. But Mary says this was her plan all along as well, and was just behaving coldly so he wouldn't suspect their shock. Afterwards, Yuzu wants to write Mary and Kusunoki's names down, but Mary rejects this since she wants to enjoy the process of love, but thanks them for their help. Then Yuzu reluctantly thanks Seiji for protecting her earlier, though she still behaves angrily at him, while Akane arrives, escaping from a bunch of reporters. But Aqua is watching all this from afar, angry at her brother. The young Aqua is on a tree, scared of something, but Seiji tells her to jump to him, which she does, though it was just Aqua's dream. Later, she's in the bathroom, but Guri then exits the shower and finds her, so she introduces herself as Seiji's girlfriend to Aqua's shock. Seiji then barges in looking for Guri, but looks away as she's naked, though Aqua tells Guri he's already with someone else, but Guri explains she knows, and that Seiji has a third girlfriend as well. So Aqua scratches his eye with her toothbrush at this. After that, Guri asks if Aqua hates him, so he explains she used to be lovable when she was little, though then Guri disappears. Later at school, Seiji's nervous that Guri will do something to Aqua, but Akane then arrives with food for him, though she's jealous as she heard him talking about Guri, but he explains it's because he's worried for his sister. At this, he asks if she gets along with Yuzu, but Akane doesn't want to talk about her home life. Meanwhile, Aqua walks back home, but is found by Guri and Yuzu, who Guri told all about and tells her she's Seiji's third girlfriend. Yuzu wants dirt on him so Akane will stop loving him, but Aqua gets mad, saying that they don't really know him, but she suddenly stops herself mid-sentence, embarrassed. But then a shadow figure approaches them. It's the demon Stolas, who escaped after being sealed years ago after attacking a child. Yuzu and Aqua run away in fear as the demon chases Aqua. As Yuzu runs, she trips, but Seiji is there to save her again. She explains that she met Aqua, but Stolas appeared, so Seiji decides to rush her. Meanwhile, Aqua is now on a tree, but thinks on how nothing's changed, reminiscing on Seiji. But then Stolas shows up, who's actually a penguin. Yuri then arrives as well and mocks Stolas' true appearance, and tries to deal with it like a normal animal, but it stabs her face with its beak. Stolas has one goal, to crazily mate with Aqua, but Seiji then arrives telling Aqua he'll save her, but as Aqua rejects him, he insists, saying he's her big brother. But Stolas then jumps to her, so Seiji tells her to jump to him, like in her dreams, so she does. And as Stolas hits his head, Aqua hugs Seiji. After that, the police apprehended Stolas, and later they headed back with Seiji carrying Aqua. But as Aqua behaves affectionately towards Seiji, Guri asks if she loves him, but Aqua gets mad at this and says that she hates him and runs away. Seiji's left confused, though then Guri asks him to go on a date with her this weekend. And later, they have that date, thought it was just so Guri could go buy a manga. As she sees many couples, she wants to survey them, but Seiji ends up tying her in a rope. But she hugs his arm instead, wanting to look like lovers, and they then head to the park. There, Seiji notices a couple, though Guri notices a one. But then the guy is busted by all his lovers. Though he tries to excuse it with that they all had fun, he's slapped. Though he tries to retaliate, but Seiji stops him. But he's hit as well, as a girl says not to underestimate a woman, and they end up getting hit by them all. But he dropped the kiss note, and one of the girl's candles falls from her head. So Seiji escapes, and Guri consoles him with a kiss. But then they notice the kiss note has burnt to a crisp. So later, Coralie reprimands Guri, though he doesn't know of the effects, as it's the first time an angel's lost their tool. So Coralie returns to heaven for info. The next day at school, Seiji notices Akane's ignoring him, wondering if it's because the book burnt up, but is then surprised by Guri, who says she'll be studying there now, to his dismay. After school, they head back, but they run into Yuzu, who mocks Seiji, as she's heard Akane broke up with him. Though they tell her the book burnt, so the couples made with it are now invalid, to her utter shock, as she won't be in a relationship with Akane anymore. But then someone approaches them, a Garu Cupid named Tyra, who Guri knows, who says that all couples should be fine and demonstrates it by showing them multiple couples Guri made up still being together. She explains that the book merely forced people together, but that the love effect would still last. But since Guri won't be able to do her job anymore, Tara gives her her tool, the love phone, as she retired already. Though as Guri is now no longer in a relationship with them, she warns them they're not immortal anymore. But she's then stabbed as Akane shows up, mad at Seiji for not going to her. Though she kisses him and explains that she acted coldly on purpose in an attempt to attract him since she read to do that in a magazine. But she then stabs Seiji. Though he isn't as Guri put the four of them in the same relationship again. But Yuzu has to kiss someone again, but since Akane and Seiji already kissed, Guri kisses Yuzu. But a pink-haired girl is watching them. A young Yuzu is told by her mother to never hang with Akane, calling her a demon. Yuzu runs away at that reveal, but trips and drops her doll, which is picked up by a pink-haired kid, but she throws it into a pond, so Yuzu tries to catch it. In the present, Yuzu attends a school, though not her usual one. But Seiji and Guri saw this, so Guri goes in and busts Yuzu. But then the guy cosplaying as her shows up, as Yuzu explains he's her double Kido. Later in her limo, she explains Kido attends her usual school for her so she can watch over Akane. And later, she spies on Akane, changing clothes. But Guri takes a picture to commemorate the lucky moment, but the flash busts them, though they escape. Yuzu's mad tough, but she wants the photo anyways. But she notices Guri's using Tyra's angel tool, which has an app that measures how well two people would get as a couple, testing it on two random people, getting a B, which is moderate, and an E, which sees him as less than an insect. So Yuzu has Guri try with herself and Akane, but while Yuzu gets XSSS, Akane only gets a C, which is whatever, to her dismay. But then Seiji arrives, complaining as Guri also sent him Akane's photo. But Akane's right there, but Seiji hides it anyways. Though then he mentions Yuzu's other school, and Akane reveals Yuzu isn't a student here, and that she knows she was spying her earlier, and that despite her not caring if Yuzu's family finds out, it will be a problem, telling her to go to her school, and that she has Seiji to watch over her. Guri then measures Seiji and Akane, and he gets a B, while she gets XSSSS, but Yuzu gets mad at this and runs away. We then see that back then, Akane saved her from falling into the pond, which was filled with piranhas. This made her fall for her, but as the pink-haired kid said both their names, Akane realized Yuzu's the shield and Yuzu, that Akane's her sister. Akane and the pink-haired kid then left, but Yuzu yelled at Akane that she loved her, though Akane just found her weird. In the present, Yuzu wonders why Akane doesn't love her, but is then approached by a creek, but she fends him off with her shield. But it also sliced the ground till she falls into a river. But Seiji then saves her, but she hits him repeatedly, though she then sees the river is actually shallow. Seiji reveals he went because was worried due to Akane being harsh to her, but Yuzu says that she was right, though Seiji claims not to know why Akane loves him since she never showed signs before, but Yuzu then hits him, angry at him for being humble despite being with Akane, though she says she's actually angry at herself for not making Akane notice her, but that she'll never give up, though she regrets saying all that and tells him to forget it. But Seiji at this says that he doesn't need to worry for her, as she's strong herself. Yuzu blushes, though she's still mad at him. Akane then arrives, but as she only pays attention to Seiji, Yuzu tells her she will never stop watching over her despite anything. But Akane tells her to do as she pleases, which makes Yuzu happy. And Guri then arrives but measures Seiji and Yuzu, seeing that they both scored a B. And meanwhile, a girl watches them. The next day, Seiji's now with a cold due to falling into a river while raining, but has to help Guri with work. But a girl, the one from yesterday named Shikimi, approaches them asking for the pairing couple's business. So then, Yuri explains the deal, but the girl doesn't actually know her crush's name, but they'll help her anyways after school. But as they leave, the girl hands Guri a Yuri manga she dropped, and they end up bonding over it. After school, Seiji meets with Shikimi, though Guri is not there yet. But since Shikimi doesn't have much time, Seiji accompanies her alone to where she last saw her crush. On the way, Seiji explains his situation with his girlfriends and accidentally slips that he's immortal, though Shikimi reacts nicely to it, to his surprise. While that happens, Guri finally arrives but finds no one, since she spent a long time picking up recommended BL books for Shikimi, so she tries to call Seiji, but she's lost the love phone. Meanwhile, Seiji and Shikimi arrive to the location, though it's an abandoned building. Seiji's nervous, so he asks what's her crush like, but as she says he's like Seiji, he suddenly gets trapped by viscous tentacles, as Shikimi reveals he's her crush. At school, Guri's told Akan Seiji went off with a girl, which makes her furious as she begins to track him, and they follow. Meanwhile, Shikimi reveals she was just wearing a costume, but Seiji tries to escape, so she his hand and steps on it repeatedly, excited because Seiji won't despite how much she damages him. And she brings out the love phone, revealing she wants something from it. While Yuzu and Guri follow Akan, Yuzu asks who's the girl, so Guri reveals her name Shikimi. But this shocks them both as they find out it's Shiramine Shikimi, the pink-haired girl they know, while Shikimi plays with Seiji. Shikimi wants to know why Akan's attracted to Seiji, but as she's about to reveal who she truly is, Akan breaks a wall and barges in, revealing that Shikimi's her cousin. She then attacks Shikimi, mad at how she always wants to steal others' things, though Shikimi actually loved being hurt by her. And then she traps Akane, mocking her for becoming weak, but complimenting her body. Shikimi says she always wanted to torment her, but didn't want to break her, but now that she's immortal, it's her chance. But as Shikimi reminds her she loves stealing things, she looks at Seiji, saying that even more, she loves breaking those things in front of them. But Yuzu then arrives and tries to protect Akan with her shield. Shikimi compliments her for getting stronger, but mocks Akan for needing a shield while being a weapon princess. But then Seiji breaks free, so Shikimi goes at him. But Seiji asks why do they attack each other as cousins, but Shikimi's surprised since Akan nor Yuzu told him anything. But as she's about to talk, Akan demands her to shut up, since she doesn't want Seiji to hit her over that. But as Akan looks worried, Shikimi gets mad at her for that expression, so she decides to turn Akan back to normal by hurting Seiji. But Guri then arrives in a shrimp costume, which she won at the shopping district, but Shikimi immediately hugs her, showing she's the girl from earlier. But then she shows her the love phone as she traps the others, saying that she dropped it, she actually stole it, and reveals that her crush is Seiji and wants to pair up with him, and with Akan and Yuzu wanting to be in their relationship. But Guri actually rejects her, seeing that while Akan and Yuzu's love fells full of warmth, hers feel empty. So she decides to trap Guri, but is then stopped by a call from Akan's mom, who she tells she hasn't seen Akan yet. But she has to go as she's been summoned, but warning them that one day she'll get in their circle and steal everything from Akan and Yuzu. After that, Guri lets them free and Akan apologizes to Seiji for all this, but he suddenly stops moving, so Guri check on him. But he's not breathing, because he died and went to heaven to his shock. He's then approached by Coralie in his true form, which freaks him out, so he switches to his cat form. Seiji wants to know what happened, since he's supposed to be immortal, but Coralie first takes him to God's room. But he goes hanging from the ceiling since he thought it'd be funny and hugs Seiji, asking him to call him Dad, introducing himself as God and as Guri's dad. Meanwhile, on Earth, Yuzu wonders if she's at fault for his cold, while Akane tries to kill herself, but Guri then recommends that the true love's kiss will wake up the sleeping princess. So Akane kisses him for 15 minutes, but to no avail. So Guri tries to kiss him, but Akane refuses but gives in to revive him. Meanwhile, in heaven, God cherishes Guri, seeing her on his TV, while Tyra comes in and gives them drinks. But then Seiji asks God what about Guri's mother, but he ends up distraught as Tara explains she ran away because he cheated on her, but he tries to explain that he didn't cheat, it's just that he likes everyone. And then Tara explains God killed him momentarily because he wanted to talk to him, as God then asks him what would he say if Guri were to become the next god, to which Seiji is against for the sake of all humanity. But then someone comes in, mocking God for wanting Guri to be God if she needs to learn love from a human, introducing himself as Mao, King of Hell. He tells Seiji to turn God down as she wants Guri to become a demon and be the new Queen of Hell, though he can't interfere with her. But God gets mad and they begin quarreling. But as Seiji thinks on Guri, he tells them Guri would lose interest quickly since she only wants to do what she wants. God recognizes this as Mao says it doesn't have to be right now. But then it's time for Seiji to return to Earth and God sends him back. On Earth, Akane attacks Guri while Yuzu reluctantly decides to kiss Seiji now, though trying to excuse it with that there's no other motive than reviving him. But Seiji then comes back to life and hits Yuzu's head, while Akane hugs him, relieved, and Guri welcomes him back, knowing that he went to heaven. Though Akane gets mad at knowing they didn't have to kiss Seiji after all. Seiji and Akane go to the beach, though Akane's distraught as his girlfriends are also going. Now there, Aqua still behaves coldly with them, but as Akane's the one who wanted her to come, she decides she'll be friends with her no matter what. Later, Seiji goes get food for Guri, but then a volleyball falls next to her, so she throws it back, but it ends up falling on Akane's which she throws back at her face, so Guri decides to play against Akane. But meanwhile, Seiji notices that the girl serving her shaved ice is actually Shikimi. She apologizes for the other day, but then she asks if she can his heart a little bit, but he refuses. But she now wants to thank him with her body, but he refuses again. But this turns her off, making her wonder why Akane ended up with someone so boring, which hurts him. But she says that Akane's less fun than she used to be, recalling that she used to be emotionless as a child, and that she looked cute having people with her cold eyes. But as she says that's just how her mother raised her, she asks Seiji if he wants to know about their family. Meanwhile, Guri and Akane have a fierce volleyball fight, but Aqua sees this and thinks of Akane as a brute woman, saying that Seiji has awful taste. But then something attacks her, ripping her swimsuit, and that thing is Stola's. But Akane hits it with a volleyball and saves Aqua, taking her to shore. Stola's followed them, but Akane is keen on protecting her. Meanwhile, Shikimi explains that Yuzu's family are the shields while Akane's are the spears, making them kind of rivals, while she's from a branch family, so she does things for the main families. But after she explains their mothers are on really bad terms, Seiji stops her, saying he'd rather hear it from them, otherwise they'd be hurt. Meanwhile, Stolas is winning against Akane, but as it's about to deal the winning blow, she remembers Shikimi calling her weak, so she stops Stolas, making its beak her palm and throws it away. But Stolas retaliates, but Guri throws her baseball bat at her, and with it, she sends it flying away. Aqua ends up amazed while Seiji comes back, wondering what happened. Later, they head back and explain what happened. Seiji asks if Aqua's thanked Akane, but at this, Aqua compliments her and that Seiji likes strong girls like her. Sometime later, they now plan on going into the school at night because two students want Guri to make them a couple tonight, but on the roof. On the way, Akane compliments them for holding hands the entire time as they're a perfect couple. But the couple says others won't accept their relationship, being told to break up. Meanwhile, Yuzu's scared, but she wants to stay for Akane. But then she spots a ghost, which freaks her out, though it then disappears. But it's actually behind them now. So they begin to run, but as they run, more and more ghosts chase them. But they end up disposing of some and escape into the sewing room. But in there, Akane and Guri are attacked by mirrors, who teleport them away to the roof. Now alone there, Akane takes advantage of this and asks Guri if she really loves Seiji. But as she gives an unsure yes, she asks her to stay away from Seiji, calling her a nuisance. Meanwhile, the rest almost make it to the roof, but as Yuzu tripped, Seiji offers to carry her, which she reluctantly accepts, though becomes mad as they call them a couple. And then they make it to the roof, where they find Akane and Guri, who have beaten up a bunch of ghosts. But it turns out the couple are also ghosts, which Guri knew already, and then explained that the other ghosts wouldn't accept them, but told them that if they made it to the roof, they would let them pass on. Guri then makes them a couple forever, and they ascend to heaven. But as Guri then tries to talk to Seiji, she remembers that she asked Akane what love exactly was, so Akane responded with that being in love means that whether one is happy or sad, her heart aches. Back in the present, Akane Yuzu and Seiji, thinking he's cheating on her again. But Guri, meanwhile, touches her chest. Guri thinks on Akane's words about love, so as Seiji and Coralie enter the room, she's about to stab herself, so they stop her, though she explains she just wanted to feel how heart-attached she felt physically. Seiji then reproaches her, telling her that even if she can't die, not to harm herself since it'd just make others sad. Then his mom comes and hands Guri a yukata since she plans on going to a festival with Seiji. But he won't go since he has plans already with Akane and Yuzu, who follows her, so Guri, angry, leaves on her own, while Akane's left mad since Guri was with Seiji. Later, at a library, she tries to grab a manga, but is helped by a guy, who she asks if he's into guys, but he's into girls, to her disappointment. But he then tries to flirt with Guri and asks her out. Guri though finds this as cliché crap, but after thinking on Seiji, she decides to go out with him. They then spend the day together, while he treats Guri really well, but this makes her compare him with Seiji, saying that's her boyfriend, though she's not sure she loves him, and that he's mean to her. At this, the guy decides to go accompany her to the festival, but as she uses her magic, she becomes surprised at him not reacting angrily like Seiji, though she decides to not think on him, and they spend the night at the festival, even winning a ring for her. After that, they go to a shrine and watch the fireworks show. And then he tries to convince her to be with him and tries to kiss her. But she suddenly remembers Seiji caring for her, so she pokes his eyes and says that she'd rather do girlfriend stuff than only Seiji, handing him back his ring and then rushes back to Seiji, wanting to tell him something. But she trips, though she's held by Seiji, who's there since she wanted to go and didn't want her to gripe at him. But Guri then kisses him, confirming that she doesn't hate him, and apologizes for earlier, saying that she wants to go out only with him. But Akane and Yuzu approaches them, angry at Guri being there. But Guri tells her that she thinks she prefers Seiji, so she chases after her again. Meanwhile, we see that the guy was actually controlled by Mao, who's confronted by Coralie as he's not supposed to interfere, but excuses it as not directly interfering, but he's left surprised at how much Seiji means to her and vanishes after that. Meanwhile, Shikimi's someone, but is approached by Akane's mom, Sao, who asks what's her daughter's relationship with Seiji. Afterwards, Akane's now tied and beaten up, threatened by her mom for having had her heart stolen, demanding her to break up with him, which she complies with. Meanwhile, Coralie talks with Seiji about Guri, disappointed that she hasn't made progress, but then asks him about God's request. But Seiji finds it embarrassing to teach her about love. But then, he's shot in the head by a hitman. While that happens, Guri and Yuzu are at a cat-made cafe where Yuzu talks about her family. Their business is to protect important people and valuables, and she recalls she's always had her shield ability, but it scared people when she was younger due to not controlling it, with Guri being the first one who found it cool, being glad that she's her friend. But then Yuzu's driver barges in and warns her of something. Meanwhile, Seiji's being chased by multiple hitmen, but Aqua, who was nearby, manages to save him, though she freaks out at seeing Coralie, and after that, Shikimi finds him. Meanwhile, Akane in a prison thinks on how her mother told her that giving her heart out to someone is a weakness, though as she grew, she didn't blindly accept her mother's words anymore, but believed that caring for others was foolish. Though one day after beating some thugs, Seiji bumped into her, but he couldn't see nor recognize her since his cat scratched his eyes. Akane was about to leave, but Seiji asked if she wasn't hurt. At this, she handed him his cat, but noticed it was injured, so she tended to it, and Seiji called her kind for this. Even though many people called her that before in an attempt to win her over, it now resonated with her, so she grew attached to him, eventually falling in love. Meanwhile, Shikimi explains Akane's mom sent her and others to hurt him, and that Akane is currently held captive because of him explaining that her family isn't allowed to fall in love, so she wants his help in rescuing Akane. But he has doubts, thinking he'd just be a burden, but Aqua kicks and insults him for this, demanding him to go help, saying that she'll go as well. While that happens, Yuzu and Guri talk about this, and after Guri encourages her, Yuzu decides to go rescue her, and Seiji decides the same. Yuzu and Guri arrive at Akane's home ready to fight, but they're met with an army of ninjas, who they fight regardless and are defeated by Guri's grenades, which makes them fall in love with each other. After that, they end up finding Akane, but she attacks Yuzu, since she's emotionless again, telling Yuzu to go home. She then attacks Guri, but after she asks if she forgot her heart somewhere, Akane lashes out at her. Guri then says she'll now steal Seiji from her, but Akane claims to not care anymore. Guri still tries to get her back to normal, but Akane throws a knife at her, but Yuzu gets in the way, saying that regardless of what happens, she won't abandon her feelings for her. But Sao then arrives and asks Yuzu to stop, while she asks Guri if she wants Akane to be pathetic like her, but Guri says she only wants to take her friend back. While that happens, Seiji, Shikimi, Coralie, and Aqua have arrived as Aqua has easily taken out a bunch of ninjas already. But then, Shikimi suddenly throws Coralie at Aqua, scaring her away, and traps Seiji, rolling him to the other's location, figuring they'd be there, and doing so as a way to show consideration, and for a canon, as she stabbed him repeatedly, claiming she can play with him now. Though Akane's left unfazed, Yuzu tries to stop Shikimi, only for Seiji to say not to, saying that he's used to it already, but that it hurt more when Akane stabbed her. Akane actually reacts to this, but is suddenly slapped by her mother, who now demands her to execute Seiji. Meanwhile, Yuzu's driver has called someone over. Back with Akane, she frees Seiji, but puts the sword against him, claiming that she doesn't love him anymore and says goodbye to him. Yuzu tries to stop this, but is stopped by Guri and Shikimi. But then Seiji tells Akane to talk to him first, since otherwise no one will be convinced by her current look, as she's now crying. So she drops her sword and tells him he can still go, not wanting him to hate her more already. But Seiji holds her hand and says that he could never hate her, which makes her hug him, claiming that she was ready to give up for him, but she can't anymore, telling him that she loves him. But Guri then mocks her for acting coldly, and then suddenly kisses Seiji, saying she could have easily stolen him from her like that. But as Akane threatens her, Guri explains that as a Cupid, she could see her love for Seiji pour out in plain sight. This frustrates Akane, but because she's right. But then Su attacks her, disappointed. But at that moment, Yuju's mom, Ameisha, arrives, who came to take Yuju away. But she gets furious, seeing Yuju's injured, so she faces Su, demanding her to stop venting her anger like this, but Su calls her a child at this, so Ameisha explodes in anger, and they then fight. Seiji asks what the hell is happening, so the girls, nervous, explain that Akane's family runs an underground professional business, while Yuzu's family, in contrast, protects whoever asks them for help. Though Seiji understands, claiming not to hate them for this to their relief. Though Yuzu then explains that their mothers aren't on the best terms due to the contrast of their businesses, but that they fell in love with the same man who became their father. But then he abandoned Suo, but she couldn't pursue him due to her family, which made her turn cold. But Akane doesn't want that path for her, so she tells Sao that regardless of her hating the idea of love, she wants to be with Seiji. But at this, Guri claims that Sao actually overflows with love more than anyone else there, saying that she loves Akane and doesn't hate anyone. But this makes her stab her head with a katana. But Ameisha laughs at the idea of her loving someone, though points out Sao used to be exactly like Akane right now, but that in contrast, Akane didn't give up easily like her, reproaching Sao for taking her anger at his husband out on Akane. After that, Akane tells Sao she'll accept any punishment, but that she won't abandon Seiji, mimicking Yuzu's words. Sao ends up telling her to do what she wants, but that she hasn't forgiven her, and bows to Seiji next time she sees him. Akane regardless thanks her, and then she remembers Guri just kissed Seiji, so she chases after her again. Though as Guri says they're friends, Akane claims they're actually rivals. After that, Akane apologizes to Yuzu for hurting her and for stealing her line earlier, but thanks her for saving her, kissing her forehead, which makes her melt. But at this, Amisha finds out from Sa that Yuzu's in love with Akane, and that she's also dating Seiji, to her shock, now mad at her driver for not telling her. And meanwhile, Seiji tells Akane she can always talk to him. In turn, Akane reveals she had chose to spend her days reliving her happiest days, but now she doesn't have to, saying that she's glad she fell in love with him. But as they look happy, Guri watches them concerned. Akane is still fighting the Guri over Seiji, so he tries to calm them down by offering them treats, but he left his wallet in the classroom, so he heads there as Akane follows him. Guri's meanwhile left confused though, because even though she's a cupid, the more Seiji and Akane's love grows, the more she feels like an outsider. On the way, they notice the cultural festival's coming up, but once they reach the classroom, they find Shikimi, who claims that she's transferred to their school. Meanwhile, Amisha drops Yuzu to school, telling him to never go to Akane's school again. Yuzu happily accepts it, but she's actually very pissed. Later, she ended up going to Akane, but she's very pissed off as Yuzu finds out it's because Shikimi transferred in. Yuzu tries to confront her, but Akane stops her. As we see that, she told them she was tasked by Amisha and Sao to monitor Seiji. Later, the students take a liking to Shikimi, but as Akane's mad, Yuzu summons Shikimi to the roof, telling her she's going too far. But Shikimi says that it sounds like she doesn't want Akane and Seiji to break up, which pisses Yuzu off, but Shikimi then tells her that she should get rid of Seiji. Though then, Shikimi says that she wonders if she doesn't want her to interfere, but for Seiji's sake, implying she likes him. But Yuzu claims to only love Akane, so Shikimi says to let her work then, and leaves. In a flashback, we see Yuzu telling her mom she had no intention of giving Akane up, but after asking what about Seiji, she claimed to hate him. So Amisha said she could easily remove him from the picture, but Yuzu, nervous, told her she'd resolve this herself. Later, Akane's anxious due to Shikimi, but Yuzu comes and says that she thinks she won't do anything. But they still don't feel confident, but as Seiji thinks she enjoys when they're in trouble, he wonders if she'd not mess with them if they showed her everything's going well between them, which Akane takes as them being the perfect couple, so she wants him to kiss her in front of everyone, because also he's never been the one who kissed her. Seiji ends up agreeing to it, but with the catch that she and Guri will have to get along, and convinces Guri by promising her treats. Afterwards, in the classroom, Guri sits next to Akane, who contains her anger, as Mary presents the roles for the school festival of a knight, a love rival, and a princess. The students propose for Shikimi to be the princess, and for Akane to play the knight, which she angrily accepts, but wanting Guri to be the rival. So they'll put their names on the board, but there, Guri teases her, with that Seiji kissed her first, which pisses her off but can't act on it. Afterwards, Seiji runs into Yuzu, who wonders about her feelings, but she ends up tripping and falls on top of Seiji. But she's now wondering if she's in love with him, so she goes and kisses him to Seiji's shock, though she claims she felt nothing, apparently, and runs away. Days later, the students prepare for the festival, but Yuzu hasn't gone to school since then. We then see her attending her own school, but she ends up banging her head against her desk repeatedly, distraught, confused at her feelings. After school though, she runs into Seiji, so she runs away, but she's slow so he easily catches up, but is fended off by her shield, which makes her stop. Seiji then tells her that he knows she was just teasing him back then, understanding that she hates him, though he actually came to hand her her costume for their play. But then, as he says he's glad he's not why she stopped coming to their school, Yuzu hits him and tells him not to decide her feelings for her and runs off. Later, the festival has begun as well as their play, where Seiji plays a tree and Akane's acting is atrocious. But then she asks Shikimi if she's why Yuzu hasn't come anymore, but Shikimi follows with the play. Yuri at this tells Akane that Yuzu can hold her own, unlike her, which angers her, but since they're in the play, she mercilessly attacks her. But then Shikimi tells Seiji she knows of his kiss with Yuzu, threatening with telling Akane. But then Yuzu arrives in costume, so Guri and Akane stop and Shikimi, and then Yuzu reveals she kissed Seiji, but because she wanted to be sure of her feelings, but that she doesn't understand them, saying that she'll always love Akane, but implying that she felt something when she kissed Seiji. Akane at this grabs her cheeks and tells her that there's no harm in her falling in love with someone else, telling her to relax and face her feelings. Yuzu cries at this and tells Akane she'll always love her the most. But she then notices the play was still going, so Guri says to continue, which makes Akane think that if they get along in front of everyone, Seiji will surely kiss her. But this makes her kiss Guri, to their shock, as the audience erupts in applause. Later, Yuzu tells Seiji she can't face her feelings yet, but tells him that she detests him, though that she doesn't hate him. And Akane meanwhile brushes her teeth after what she did. But Shikimi then approaches them, but Akane tells her that it's pointless to try and break them up and leaves. But then she asks Guri if she's off with Akane and Yuzu getting closer to Seiji. With their parents on a trip, Aqua decides to stay at a friend's house for the night, but warns Seiji to not bring girls in. But that goes out the window as Akane arrives, who had a hunch he'd be alone, wanting to stay for the night, to Seiji's shock. But she also wants her promise fulfilled and expects Seiji to kiss her. But the Guri barges in wearing bath towels to Akane's utter anger, and afterwards, she stabbed them multiple times again. But then someone else rings on his doorbell, with that being Yuzu, who wants to stay the night as well because she can't let Akane and Seiji spend the night together alone. But then someone else rings on the doorbell, but it's Shikimi, who he instantly closes and locks the door to. But she gets in anyway with a picklock and blackmails Yuzu and Akane with telling their mothers. So afterwards, they all head to the shopping district, where they cause their usual problems, and later they head back home where Akane and Yuzu will cook their meal. But Yuzu injures herself, so Seiji bandages it, but she ends up blushing, which Guri and Shikimi notice. Afterwards, Akane's made a feast, but only for Seiji and Yuzu, giving Guri and Shikimi barely a vegetable each. So at this, Guri decides to eat Seiji's portion and Shikimi eats Yuzu's, which makes them fight with them, and Akane stabs them again. Later, Seiji, exhausted, takes a bath, but then finds Guri on top of him, filming him to his shock. But Akane, hearing screams, barges in but leaves immediately after seeing Seiji naked and drags Guri with her. So Seiji tries to relax again, only to see Shikimi next to him to his shock. Afterwards, Seiji's at his porch and is approached by Akane, who just took a bath, as Yuzu decides to go bath in her used bath water. But as Akane seems mad, Seiji remembers he had to kiss her. But Akane says that she doesn't want to force him, but Seiji goes for it anyways and kisses her, since he made the promise. Though then nervously tries to say he actually wanted to do it, though Akane ends up very happy regardless. Shikimi, seeing this, asks Guri if she felt anything thanks to that, which she says that she felt joy as usual, being a cupid. Later, Seiji has them sleep in his room together while he goes sleep to the couch. And in the morning he wakes up, surrounded by them all, who have caused a mess. But at that moment, Aqua is back as well and hits Seiji after seeing all this. But meanwhile, in the Antarctic, something breaks out. Later, Yuri sees Aqua and Seiji's old pictures, noticing Aqua used to be very cute. But meanwhile, Aqua is mad at Seiji, so she leaves the house. But she's followed by Guri, who asks if she's behaving like this because she wants Seiji's attention, since he doesn't give her as much attention as before. Aqua tries to deny that, but Guri, who claims to like big brother / little sister love stories, wants to help her be like how she used to be. So they head to the mall, where Guri wants her to wear cute clothes like before, so she's given a dress, which she seems to like at first, though she ends up rejecting it. After that, Yuri asks if she's resisting cute things on purpose, which Aqua denies, but at this, Guri says that she knows she doesn't hate Seiji. But then Aqua asks Guri if she actually likes Seiji, since it doesn't seem like she does, compared to the others. But Guri says she's been getting that a lot, so at this, Aqua asks if doesn't that mean that she's missing something. Though then Aqua decides to go back home alone, in the elevator, she thinks on her not liking cute things anymore, remembering Seiji liking strong girls, but claims that that's not why. But on the ground floor, the scene's a mess as Stolas is there again. Having endured a natural selection training after his defeat, he's back, wanting to mate with Aqua. But she escapes and ends up at a playground. She doesn't want Seiji to help her, wanting to deal with this herself, but she's scared. But then Coralie shows up, who freaks her out, but then Stolas catches up and gropes Aqua. But Coralie defends her, taking on to his true form and fights Stolas, who he easily beats. But Stolas won't give up, so Coralie tells Aqua to run, but as Stolas charges at him, Aqua kicks him, to Stola's shock, and sends him flying away. She ends up shocked at having just beaten him, and Coralie congratulates her for conquering her own weakness. Seiji then arrives, but Aqua tells him she beats Stolas, which he finds surprising and amazing. But at this, Aqua realizes Seiji hasn't changed, and that he'll always be her brother, realizing she doesn't have to force herself to be someone she doesn't want to be. Meanwhile, Guri arrives, but stops as she remembers Aqua asking if she's missing something. And then Shikimi runs into her, who, noticing her down, offers her to talk to her, which she accepts, but Seiji's left wondering where Guri's at now. Seiji tries to find Guri, who hasn't shown up in a while. So he explains this to Coralie, who Aqua plays with, but he decides to switch into Blue's body and help find Guri, which freaks Aqua out. Later at school, Akane's happy because Guri hasn't shown up in a week, though Yuzu's concerned since she isn't even answering her phone. But as Seiji doesn't worry much, Coralie later reprimands him, but Seiji tells him to ask God where she is. But Coralie explains that the God TV isn't working right now. But then Coralie reminds them they have to work. But at this, Yuzu says that that shouldn't be why they search for her, but rather because she's their friend. Meanwhile, Shikimi helps Mary carry boxes, but they run into Kusunoki, who trips again, so Mary helps him, which Shikimi finds interesting. Later, Seiji thinks on how everything's quiet now, but still wants to find Guri, so she thinks on asking Shikimi now. And meanwhile, Shikimi approaches Kusunoki, supposedly wanting to ask him a question about a lesson, but she actually wants to him. But Seiji saw this and immediately dragged her out. So they end up outside a storage room, but Shikimi drags him in, though there Seiji tells her not to steal Kusunoki from Mary, saying that stealing something doesn't make it hers. After that, he asks if she knows about Guri's disappearance, but as Shikimi points out he doesn't trust her, he says that she doesn't need others' trust, But this pisses Shikimi off as he's acting like he's not interested in her. So she traps him again and decides to him and then kisses him repeatedly. But this was for Guri, who was watching from outside. Back then, Guri and Shikimi went to a maid cafe where she told her about her deal with her feelings for Seiji, saying that she's not sure if she's happy lately. At this, Shikimi recommended staying away from Seiji until she cleared those feelings up and to think on what makes her different from Akane and Yuzu. She accepted doing that, but she was actually seeing Seiji all this time from afar, but she realized seeing him with other girls made her feel a bit uneasy and lethargic. And when Shikimi dragged him into the storage room, she hopes Seiji would find her soon, but that he hasn't tried to find her, wondering if he cares about her at all. Back in the present, the storage room crumbles, as Akane's found them. After attacking, she finds out Shikimi wanted to steal Kusunoki from Mary, so Akane reproaches her, calling her pitiful, and that she'd be left alone forever. But Shikimi says that she won't be the only one as she the tree branch and makes Guri fall, who fell asleep to their shock. But Shikimi reveals Guri was always close. It's just that they never truly looked for her. But as Seiji gets mad at Guri for that, thinking she was playing a prank on them, Shikimi asks her if she got her answer, to which she says that she still doesn't understand. So Shikimi tells her to try asking him. So she asks Seiji, how does he feel about her? But he responds with that she's been nothing but a pain since they first met. But this does something to Guri, as she's then surrounded by a cocoon of black feathers to their shock. And then Mao appears, who is working with Shikimi, and thanks Seiji for this as he snaps his fingers and opens Guri's cocoon, where thanks to Seiji pushing her away, she has fallen and turned into a demon. Guri then sets off to work, but Seiji wants an explanation, but Guri simply apologizes to Seiji for bothering him and bids him farewell, saying that the Guri they knew no longer exists, thanks to Seiji. Meanwhile, Mao returns to Hell and takes Shikimi with him. Coralie's furious at Seiji though, saying that the only reason an angel would fall is if they doubt the concept of love, but Yuzu and Coralie then decide to go after Guri. Later, Guri's now breaking up relationships, cleaning up her mess as an angel, but Yuzu finds her and tells her she's not like this. But Guri then tries to get rid of her love as well, but Coralie saves her and tries to reason with Guri, but no to avail as she leaves. Seiji and Akane then arrive, but Coralie and Yuzu are furious at Seiji for causing this, but Akane defends Seiji, saying this is merely Guri's fault. Yuzu then pleads to Akino for her help, but she refuses, so Yuzu ends up calling her a big dummy and leaves on her own, but Seiji decides to follow her. Seiji catches up to Yuzu, then Coralie says they all must go to heaven, so he switches to his third form, which kills them. So they arrive at God's room and find God furious at Mao, though he instantly gets happy at seeing them. Though he's still pissed at Mao for using a human to do his deeds, though recognizes it's easier to make Guri fall than a normal angel, since she's half demon, thanks to her mother being a demon, which is why she's more uncertain about love compared to other angels. Seiji and Yuzu end up shocked at this, but Seiji asks how to return her to normal, so God says Seiji's gotta go to hell and see her, and there ask her what's got her so confused. So they decide to go to hell through a Mario pipe. Meanwhile, in hell, Guri rests with Shikimi, who wants to explore hell. But Mao stops her, telling her not to get full of herself, but she wants her reward already, to be made a demon. But Mao stalls this, saying that she's already like one and leaves. But Shikimi decides to go out anyways, through the window, but Guri tries to stop her. But they end up talking about why Shikimi wants to steal things so badly. Shikimi remembers that when she was younger, she had one of the Kane's hairpins, but it was taken away since it didn't suit her. And then, at a party, she heard some women calling her greedy and to earn what she wants by herself. This made her steal one of their bracelets, but she then threw down a drain, which changed her. But in the present, she merely says that she wants to cause pain. But Guri, at this, says that she only does this because she wants to be noticed. But Guri now wonders if that's also why she did things. Meanwhile, Yuzu, Seiji, and Coralie arrive at Hell, disguised. Though they have no idea where to find Guri, they hear two demons talk about how the new Mao has been forcing them to work non-stop, but that he's found Guri, Mavro's daughter, and wonder if she'd let them do evil things again if she became Mao. But hearing this, Seiji claims that she'd never do something like that, reminiscing on the old Guri, and being keen on turning her back. Meanwhile, Mao shows Guri the throne of Hell, wanting her to be the new Mao eventually. But she's uninterested, so Mao tries to tell her that she can live freely like always with her being here being enough, but Guri only wants to work. And then she tells Mao to not seek her mother's shadow on her and leaves. Mao's left shocked as he remembers Guri's mother, Mavro. She was the previous queen of Hell, but she only wanted to be free. Mao saw her as his muse, but then she broke him by revealing that she'd gotten engaged with God, so she left Hell and left Mao in charge. But eventually, they divorced after God cheated on her, but Mavro went missing after that and was never found. He confronted God about this, but there he saw Guri, who completely reminded her of Mavro, thinking he had found his muse again. But he ended up rejected in the end again. Meanwhile, the group waits for a bus, but the demons begin to freak out since they spotted a human. But it's actually Shikimi who spots the group. But she goes and ruins Seiji's disguise, busting them, so they run away, but the police then attacks them. But the police is suddenly beaten, alongside Cerberus, by Akane. To their shock, she goes and hugs Seiji and explains that she heard from Tiara that the quickest way to go to Seiji was telling her to imagine something that would shock her to death. So she felt on Seiji with someone else and 7 children. But she's also there for Guri, saying she owes her a favor, so they head to Mao's tower, and there on the roof, they find her. But as Guri tells them to go back, Akane attacks her, wanting her to hit back, so she turns back to normal, but didn't work. So Akane gives up and wants to return with Seiji home, but Yuzu tells Seiji to talk with Guri, though Guri's uninterested, so at this, Akane says she's better fit as a demon, but Guri agrees, so Akane gets mad at her, telling her to get it together. But as Guri says she's only a demon who works to destroy love, Akane says she'd have destroyed their love first, which she decides to do now. But Seiji thinks on the old Guri, wanting her back, so he asks her to make him take a jab at her. But Guri suddenly asks if that's a dirty joke, but to both's surprise, as she acted like the old Guri. But Shikimi instead tries to make Guri stay like this, telling her to say that she hates Seiji. But Guri, thinking, realizes she likes him, but that isn't love since something's missing. But then Seiji remembers God's words, so he asks Guri what does he want him to do. But as she thinks on that, her wings suddenly disappear and she falls, but Seiji jumps and holds her. As they fall, Guri thinks that she loves him, but she feels lonely, and that it's not always fun, but she doesn't hate it. And then angel wings sprout from her back again and tells Seiji that she wants him to love her, and kisses Seiji, saying that she understands what she was lacking now, the feeling of wanting to be loved by the other, saying that she loves him and asking him to love her back. But Akane throws a knife at her, though Guri thanks her and Yuzu, telling them she loves them and asking for their love back as well, while Yuzu happily says she would, although Akane still calls her rival. Shikimi's disappointed though, as Mao won't turn her into a demon now, but Guri then tells her to earn others' acknowledgement with love instead of stealing, and that once she's done that, she'll add her to their relationship together. Shock. So Shikimi decides to go ahead with it. After that, Seiji tells Guri that despite her being a pain, he'll still be her straight man and tells her to do the things she finds fun. At this, Guri tries to kiss him, but stops, saying that she'd rather wait for him again. After that, they return home, and their life was back to normal at last.